So let's talk about where we're headed. So it is a brave new world. We've all seen technology advance, but this is a seems to me like the next 10 years are going to be very different than what we've seen over the past 20 or 30 years. Where do you see this in terms of the impact on? So you obviously have thought about how it's going to impact startups, maybe on how organizations to begin to scale or maybe not scale. But where do you see it impacting at the human level, kind of the mid-level tech worker, the folks? I mean, if you're using agents as opposed to hiring, there's a downstream effect to that. Now, not as many folks are in demand. Agents scale infinitely. They scale in a way that humans can't, quite frankly. And there's, to be honest, a lot of upside to having agents, and that they're not requiring benefits. They never get sick. They don't look for other jobs. They're incredibly reliable, although maybe not as creative and nimble. But where do you see this all going in terms of the impact on kind of the tech worker?
I think it will be very big, but not as big as one might expect. So if the world was static and nothing has changed and we just brought in the agents, today, if you take all the agents, even my agents, if you actually implement them in all the companies in the world, you're going to lay off maybe half of the whole workforce, right? And I mean, at least because I have products and I have so few people, and some might say that many of my products outcompete companies with 50 to 100 people, right? So that's kind of the proof, right? But the reality here is that because of this, because I can build products with very few people, it means that I can build the products which would not make sense in the former world because, for example, the markets were too little or the potential for revenue was too little. So now, if it takes me just 1 month to launch a product and I can do it all on my own, just pay to the agents, maybe 1K a month. So the whole burn is just my own salary and the agents, and I can do the whole thing. Suddenly, the whole new set of projects or ideas or niches open up, right? Which were otherwise like not viable sources for businesses. And that's, I think, what's going to happen. I think the world only cared about the areas where there was at least $1 billion market. So everything that was below $1 billion market, nobody built anything for that. And that's, I think, we probably have 99% of the world not covered by software, hardware, technology, marketplaces, and everything. So it's like almost the whole world is actually not that advanced as we think, because the typical person that builds stuff lives in this little bubble where you use the tools to build the tools. But the majority of the people, they lack a lot of software. And I think now, because a lot of people can build software with almost no investment and no cash that's needed there, I think we will see a lot more software demand. And because of that, we will see a lot more people building those small software products for small niches where the potential is, let's say, 1 million a year. That's the roof, right? But it's still good money and it's kind of fun. So I think the number of people who build startups will go crazy. I think there will be at least like 300 million people building startups compared to what we have now. Now maybe it's like 10 million people building. And because of that, the employment will become a problem. But I think most of the people will build startups, or they will be employed as just one employee only. So like, it makes sense to have employees when you have agents, because still you need human oversight, right? But you don't need so many employees. So I think that will be the solution.
Again, this is fascinating to me, because I was just reading actually a deeper dive. Andrew Chen, Andrew Chen,
Yeah.
a deeper dive thought that he had around this idea that vibe coding and once you kind of layer in a GUI interface like a Figma on top of vibe coding, you're going to end up with anybody can start to create software one-off for themselves.
Yeah.
And what you'll end up with is to your point, no longer will it be large companies developing large software to become valuable. It'll be very small
Yeah.
niche players developing very small niche software to become valuable in a completely different level, but because they're smaller, their value doesn't need to be at the same scale to be worth it.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing becomes almost a reduction in the value of large software development, to the point where you're kind of where you are, where you're building for a use case. But I'm curious, if you play your thought out there, are people geared or socialized or capable of becoming founders? I mean, it seems to me that most people don't want it. That even if it is kind of all easy to do now, it's still, as you pointed out earlier, there are times where it's like it's not actually all that much fun. Things happen, pandemics hit, all of a sudden your whole plan is shifted, and you have to weather the storm and have that kind of grit and resilience. And not everybody, I think, is built like that.
I have quite unusual opinion on this, which I had for a long while. So back in 2010, when iPhone happened and the internet on the phone happened and Instagram came in, I remember I was doing mobile apps back then. And I remember there were a lot of discussions where people thought that the content creation on Instagram is going to fail because like the regular person doesn't want to create content, annotate image, and put together a video clip and write text and add hashtags, because it's kind of a thing for content creators. That's just tiny minority of the people. They're born that way, and they do that. Like the extroverted people who like to share stories, but the regular people don't do that. And today, almost everyone creates content on at least one social media. So some people do it on Twitter, some do it on Instagram, some do it on Facebook, etc.
Well, and by creating content, you're saying participate in the conversation, because
no, by creating content, I mean they actually put time that was considered as a serious kind of effort to create content. And we didn't think that people will actually do that because they will just scroll. So we thought people will just scroll and just few people will create and most people will scroll. But we ended up in a world where few people create content that gets attention. That's true. But at the same time, if you look at the number of people who create content, not the viral, but in general, the content, like more than 50% of social media users, they actively create content and some of them put time into it. Like they actually use tools to make the videos and put some filters and things like that, and some even more. Which was something nobody anticipated. People thought that 1 out of 100 will do, the rest won't. But we see it like almost 50 out of 100, and out of those 50, maybe 20 do it pretty serious, which is not something people expected. And I think if you look at the software, the world has been in the old ages. We had the world where more people did their own stuff. People build their own houses. Almost everyone built their own house, for example. Now we could say that most people like incapable of building their own house. I think it's all about the market. So in today's market, there is no incentive and there is punishment for being a founder. So there's no incentive. It means that you can actually make good money on a corporate job compared to being founder in most cases, right? Don't go there for the money. And then the punishment is that if you're in a corporate job, you get your insurance paid and a lot of other perks. So basically the invisible hand of the open market created the condition where people don't want to be founders and only few people want to be founders. But we're moving into the world where the whole thing will change. So it'll be cooler to be a founder. It'll be more respectful. People will kind of give you light for that. And the other thing is that it'll be more punishment to be a corporate worker, because once agents replace the corporate workers, the salaries will drop. The requirements will grow. You have to work more and earn less. So once you make that job, less paid and more like harder job that gets you paid less, and then being founder is the opposite. You get more money and more respect, and I think we will see slowly people moving from one group to the other group. But at the same time, of course, same as in content creation, the number of founders who are incredibly good won't really change that much. Same as in the content, like the best content creators are fixed group of people, and it was always that size of the people. But at the same time, since same like in content creation, like Mr. Beast is the best YouTuber, but he doesn't want to create content about cows, like about milking a cow. Like he doesn't want to create that. If he wanted, he would come there and crush everyone, right? Because he's the best. But he will not go there. It means that there are certain niches in the YouTube where nobody wants to make a content. And if you go and make the content there, as long as you're okay, you're going to get a lot of views. And I know a lot of content like that. Like I have rabbits and I look for rabbit kind of content on YouTube. And it's very average content with like a lot of views because there's a niche for that. And the guy is selling something and he's making good money out of the content. He's doing affiliate sales for the pills for rabbits, etc. Same thing for founders. I think once you lower the bar, like today the bar is huge. You either build $1 billion company or don't enter the game because there's nothing else there. But imagine in a world where you can build a tiny little app for a tiny little group, and by design, no super talented founders want to compete with you because they have bigger niches and bigger audiences, then it's not that hard anymore because you have tools, small competition, it's respectful, well paid. Corporate jobs are not that good anymore.
Well, so one of the things that you also talk about is starting up in general. And how you should think about it, and you offer straight up advice around, if I were to start something today, here's some of the things I would do. And one of the things that you talked about recently was how to think about what to start. So obviously that's job one, right? What am I going to start? Not, well, I guess job one is I agree I will start.
Yeah.
But then you have to come up with a thing to start. If you don't already have one. And so what advice would you offer to somebody who's thinking, okay, I agree with what John's saying. We all need to start thinking about becoming founders and entrepreneurs and get going. So how would you offer, what advice would you offer to somebody who's in that nascent stage of trying to figure out what to do?
By default, people do exactly the wrong thing. So they go and do something that's popular and everybody else is doing. Like, for example, everyone is building AI wrapper or AI chatbot. They build that. So my advice is the opposite. So just look at everything what people are building and don't build that, because there's huge competition there. So your job as a founder to make sure you avoid competition. So to make sure that you are the only one doing what you do, not just today, but also tomorrow. Right? Like you might be lucky and nobody heard about it, but then tomorrow everybody enters the game and it's same problem. Like just because you're the first one, it doesn't mean anything. People come in and the prices drop. So make sure that you pick the niche where the competition is low and the potential of competition is low too. And that means that you have to look for smaller niches or for less popular stuff. It means that it's the opposite of what you want, because by default, all your ideas will be something popular because you consume popular content, you consume the trends, and then you will think like everybody else. So by default, you think like everybody else. So all other founders who think about the idea today, you're all sitting and thinking the same thing now. So do the opposite. pick the niche that you like. For example, like flowers or schooling or tractors, whatever. So it has to be something not sexy enough, but also something you are willing to understand and to be one of the experts in this niche, probably one of the best in the world, or at least in your area. And if you do that, then you have to figure out the problems of that niche. And the best way, what I've been doing myself, is that I find a niche and I try to I try to learn and I try to sell service to the niche, because service is way easier compared to product, because service is human doing the work, and usually it's easy to sell because you just make one transaction with one person and you drop the price and they just buy from you because you drop the price. That it happens for services, right? For products, it doesn't happen because product is both forever. They buy it to use forever, but service is just one time. And then you do the service, and while you do the service, you learn what could be turned into the product, what part of the service could be turned into the product. And you maybe have to do a lot of services to figure out which part can be turned into product. And this is a really good way, because on the way of doing this, you also understand the audience. You have a chance to pitch your products to the audience because you're making something for them physically right there. And then you can test your ideas, and if something clicks with the audience, you can build the product. So it's like multi-step. It's not like you wake up in the morning and you come up with an idea. But for me, that worked so many times, and just coming up with an idea almost never worked for me. And I haven't seen that working for anyone almost. So I think people should, like, the idea is more important than everything else. Like, people think that idea is not important. It's false, because you can put infinite amount of effort into bad idea. And by bad idea, I mean the idea that's bad and it's also for wrong audience in a wrong format. So all the details about the idea, not just the one liner, but all the details around. And I think people should invest more into the idea itself and who they sell it to, in what format, what size. And if that job is done well and you actually get feedback, like you validate with the actual buyer that they want it, and then they keep asking you, when is this done? Like you say in a month, and they call you in a month, and is it done? It means that they actually need it. And then there's very low chance to fail from that moment. And there's very high chance to fail if you don't have the validation. So I would say validate the idea first by doing these kind of steps. Enter as a spy into their network, try to understand what they want, and then pitch the ideas, and then the one that clicks, go and build that one.